out in the west by the Chad Imak. It's the 5 Imak tribes. They're on the river that goes right straight through the Imak River Basin going into Herat on the western edge. And the Uzbeks speak a Turkish language, and Turkmen obviously, and so do the Kyrgyz. They're all Turkic-speaking people. There was, as a matter of fact, after the reduction of the Soviet Union, a pan-Turkic movement in which Turkey actually sent emissaries and all sorts of trade commissions and so forth to try and bring these Turkic-speaking people into the fold. Much the same as the Iranis started working into Tajikistan, which is a Farsi-speaking country. In other words, the linguistic bonds these guys attempted after the Soviet Union collapsed to bring them into their economic orbit. And today, anybody who happens to be in Afghanistan is an Afghan. And this is where we get this simplistic horse crap here in the United States that the Tajiks are Afghans and this is their Afghans and that's Afghans. And so we're totally confused as to who's what. And basically the civil war will go on between the Tajiks, the Hazara, and the Pathan. That's it. That's the way it's going to be. Now, ethnic groups. The last real census was in 1979, okay? Before the Russians walked in. Under the Bonn Agreement, there was a new census was to be taken. But by June of 2008, only 7 of the 32 provinces have been counted. There had never been a census of Afghanistan. They don't know how many Afghans there are. They haven't the slightest idea. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of interesting things that the Pashto guys, for example, don't count women when they're counting people in their communities. They don't count boys under the age of puberty. If they don't have pubic hairs, they're not men. They're not countable. So you've got a large segment of the Pashto population which just isn't counted. We start looking here at some of the numbers. They start to go down damn fast, and finally we get down to Jews, and it's 2. There were 2 in Kabul. That's it. And that's a formal number, so you can take a look at the various people there. Nuristani are interesting. They're vestiges of the Greeks. When Alexander the Great left, he left colonies there as well. They're up on the eastern border, up along Jammu and Kashmir. These guys are different from the rest of the nation insofar as they don't sit on the floor. They sit at tables with chairs. They have little wooden gods, and up until about 1870 so, had their own religion. And then the Iron Emir came in and busted them all. And what had been Kafiristan, or land of the unbeliever, became Nuristan, which is now a province, and it's the land of light. So he came in and fixed them. Religions. There are only 2 religions, really. And so there you go. You have the Hanifi rite, which is a very liberal branch or a sect of jurisprudence in the Sunni Islamic guys. The Shia guys are Jafaris. The Shia guys are a little bit strange, and as a matter of fact, the Sunni guys don't even conceive of them as being Muslims. Okay, so there's another little division you might want to put in the back of your mind. Now, the Sufi sect these are mystics. They're the ones that have the whirling dervishes. The first of the presidents following the communist presidents in Afghanistan was a fellow by the name of Sibghatullah Mujahidi, and he was a Sufi. He was a mystic, and he lasted about 9 months. Okay, and he was the one that set Ariana Afghan Airlines back on its feet. They had an Antonov 27, I think, or 28. And somebody blew it out of the air. They collected the insurance, made down payments on leases for 3 ex-Air France 727s, and Ariana Afghan Airways was back in the air. Okay. The Hanifi rite, as I say, is the most liberal of the Muslim sects or rites. And these are schools of jurisprudence. In other words, they're interpretations of the Quran and the Hadith and so forth. Because the Pashto guys are Hanifi rite, it was anticipated that at the end of the Civil War, which we interrupted, that they would prevail. In other words, the Islamists were the ones that drove everybody to excel in battle. But when it came to excelling in running a country, they were just pure nonsense. And basically, you were waiting for the Hanifi guys to come in and say, hey, wait a minute, you don't want to do this, and slow that down and, cool it. It's interesting, the Tajiks are also Sunni. The Shia, Hazara and Farsiwan, and again, they're in central Afghanistan in a province called Khor. And the Jafari rite is a little more stringent. These are the guys who in Lebanon and so forth, when they're celebrating Ashura, which is their holiday, will take a sword and whack it so it sticks in the top of their skull and run around with blood squirting all over the place. Well, they're flagellant. They will use nails twisted around on chains and whip themselves until the bones are showing. I mean, these guys are weird. even by Oriental religion standards. Okay, now, 1% of the total population is divided among these fellows, some of whom we know and some of whom we don't. Languages. I mentioned there were over 90 languages. There were a couple of gals that linguistic folks that went all through the country in about, I think it was in 1950, 54, 55. It was before the hippies came in. And they ran all over the hills, and here we go. This is some of the languages. There's Aimak, Balochi, Brahui, Dari, Hazaragi, and Pashai, Pashto, Turkman, Uzbek. Turkman, these are both Turkish, as is the Pashai. And Dari is simply an older form of Farsi. It's sort of like Canadian French versus Parisian French. One will say, I wish you would please move your cow. He's eating all my radishes. And the other one will say, you're a goddamn cow, get it out. One is very direct. That would be the Dari Farsi version. Whereas the Farsi guys are, well, I'll give you an idea. Shukri means thank you. But they will say, Moto Shakiram. So it's a very flowery language, and they take a long while to say anything. And that's the difference. Everybody's bilingual for all intents. They all speak Dari, and they all speak some Pashto, and at least a third language of some sort. It's very, very typical of them. All right, governance. Since 1923, we'll bring it up to recent times. They have 6 constitutions. The most recent one in 2004 was written about the time they had their election, as a matter of fact. They rented a beer hall tent from the Germans and had a great big jirga and brought in a constitution. Everybody said, oh, that's wonderful. They never implemented any of them. Not one of them. Since the end of 73, the only thing that's been constant has been turmoil and instability. I mean, there's no central government is something we like. Apparently, it's something they don't have any use for. Okay? We would like to see perhaps a benevolent despot puppet. Somebody we can control and who's despotic and kind of brings everybody into line. But the rural majority has little use for a central government whatsoever. They really don't want it. And they want local control and forums, jirga and shura, where everybody has a voice. I've sat through shura, which are like committee meetings, and the whole damn group, everybody in the village will stand there. And we had one guy where there was a guy who'd been murdered. And they brought the families of the murdered guy and the family of the murderer, and everybody sat around in a big circle, and you had a group of old guys like the ones at the end of the slideshow. And they presented the case. The man who'd been murdered had these children and 2 wives, and on and on and on. Who's going to take care of this, that, and the other thing? And the murdered guy, he had more wives and more children, and in the murder, he really needed to live. And so the question arose, do you want blood money, or will we just finish this in the right way? And everybody thought about it and read the